let's take a quick break from the MAGA stuff. Because, believe it or not, this show hasn't always been entirely filled with MAGA stuff. There are kinds of chuds other than the explicitly MAGA ones. This is a video entitled, Why Am I So Anti-Video Games? And games is spelled Gaymes. So let's see this red pillar talk about why he thinks video games are not based.
Are video games a pathetic waste of time, or am I just anti-fun? Let's find out. So, the answer could actually be both. So I'm going to talk about video games in this video. I'm going to be doing the read the email that I printed out kind of video. A lot of people have been talking about video games recently because apparently in Linux there's some kind of new thing with the kernel where it's easier to play games or something. I don't know anything about it. You'd have to ask someone else. Because I don't care about video games. I don't care about no video games. Actually, that's going to be what this video is about. Why do I, on so many occasions, speak out about video games? I'm going to explain my point using this email that I got. So this...
I feel like this is going to be a big bitch fest, mostly because, like, there are things I don't like. What would be an example of something I don't like that's a hobby that other people do? Sports. Okay? I don't like sports. It's just not something I've ever been interested in, and it doesn't really matter the sport, you know? Whether it's, you know, baseball or hockey or football or, you know, any of the things that people play. I'm not against them. I've been to sporting events, and they can be fun on occasion, like a baseball game or a hockey game or whatever. They can be fun, but mostly because you get to hang out with people you care about, friends or whoever. And the food tends to be pretty good in that, you know, concession stand kind of way. So that can be a fun time. But I'm not into sports. I don't watch them on TV ever. I don't find them interesting. I don't know basically any sports figures, and that's fine. I also don't take the time, though, to be like, here's why sports are stupid and bad. Like, who cares? There are so many different kinds of people in this world who have all sorts of different kinds of interests, and that's fantastic. I'm glad that sports exist for people who enjoy that kind of thing, who are into competitiveness, who are into that thrill that they get that I don't happen to get. That's great. That's fine. I play video games. I enjoy them a lot, and if someone else doesn't like them, that's valid as well. I don't expect everyone to like video games. I don't expect everyone to like movies or specific TV shows or whatever. We all have different interests, and that's great. Variety is the spice of life. Going out and looking at someone else's hobby and being like, your hobby is bad, and here's why, is usually something really pathetic people do. So I'm interested in what his points are going to be as to why gaming is bad. I assume it's going to be like something along the lines of, oh, it's not productive, you're not doing anything. That's like, yeah, it's a recreation activity. Recreation activities aren't necessarily productive. They can be, but, you know, a lot of the time they're not. And there's nothing wrong with that in moderation.
This email is from one Allison. Allison says, on setting a good example for kids/Zoomers, one of my videos, some other videos, and the hermetic answer, that's an article on my website, you said something along the lines of games and porn aren't worth spending time on because they are inert activities that don't give you anything from them, which makes some sense.
Enjoyment? I'm specifically talking about the video games here, not the other thing. But, like, video games are a recreational activity. Their intent is to be enjoyable and fun, engaging if it's a game that is a story that's compelling to you, or if the gameplay happens to be something that you get really engaged in, then that's enjoyment. You get the serotonin, it's fun. Like a board game. A board game isn't productive, but it's fun.
In a comment, you also said that video consumption, I guess watching YouTube a lot, is also wasteful, which stuck with me because it was very honest. Games are art, and it is not worthwhile to spend time with them, for you get nothing in return. But paintings are also art. Does this mean it's not worthwhile to spend time with them? Movies? Poems? Literature? Or is it more the kind of art that matters? Like maybe some postmodernist art wouldn't be worthwhile, but then that raises the question of what criteria the worthwhile art should meet, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I think this brings up a good point. He compares, I assume this Allison is a boy name. I mean, in the U.S. it's a girl name, but I'm assuming this is a boy. He has some Portuguese last name.
Does it matter?
So Video games, they're art, right? Well, first off, a lot of people will be like, "Oh no, video games aren't art." But I'm gonna cuck out on this, and I'm gonna say yes, video games are art. There's lots of narrative involved. There, of course, is lots of graphical art involved. It actually takes a lot to put together a video game. Sometimes a lot more than a book. Actually, definitely a lot more nowadays. You have these big AAA video games. So if they're art, why would it be wrong? Why would it be wasteful to consume that kind of art and not other kinds of art? Now, let me give you an example, okay? I once had a girlfriend, okay? And she is notable because she read hours and hours and hours. Like, she read these books like Wheel of Time kind of stuff where it's like not just, it's like one book that's like hundreds of pages, but then there's like a bajillion volumes in the series. She was a big fan of, what is it?
Is he about to shit on, like, novels? I was coming here waiting for him to be like, oh, video games aren't art, they're trash. Is he seriously about to be like, art that's frivolous is a waste of time, all of it, including novels?
Brandon Sanderson, okay? Like these kind of books, actually I think I have one Wheel of Time book back here that I've never read. Okay, it's like books like this, but there are like 30,000 of them in the series. She loved these stuff, loved these things. She would read lots of them. She probably read hours and hours of her life, spent hours of her life reading that kind of stuff. Now, that said, she wasn't weird because of it. That is, she didn't want to skip out on social things because she wanted to get home and read her books. She just did it sort of, if she had time, she'd open a book and that was it. It wasn't like an addictive thing to her. Now, if you asked her about it, she would talk about it. She'd talk very glowingly about the book she read, but it wasn't even something that she was like obsessively pushing on everyone. Where I feel like that is very much the case a lot of the times with video games. The one thing about video games that separates them...
Look, online gamer culture, people like, let me give you an example. This gentleman here, the Quartering. I understand that online gamer culture can be incredibly cringy, incredibly gatekeepy, pretty misogynistic usually, sometimes homophobic. You know, it can be super duper cringe. It springs to mind images of like Mountain Dew chugging, Doritos, you know, shoving fistfuls, neckbeard type people. I understand that, and a lot of that has to do with the discourse that takes place online about video games on places like Reddit or 4chan or wherever, you know, you have your MGTOW type people hanging around. Your gamer gators, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that stuff's pretty bad. But I think that also disregards the fact that there are toxic elements of basically every community. It's quite large in the gaming community online, unfortunately, which is why I don't self-describe the label of, like, gamer. I just enjoy video games as a medium. A lot of it's been tarnished by elements of the community. But, like, if you go to, like, private Discord servers or wherever, and you find groups of people that enjoy things similar to you in a non-toxic way, then that's great, and that's wonderful. And I don't typically see people, like, proselytizing the virtue of video games to other people any more than any other hobby, right? Like, sometimes you might be like, oh, did you see this movie? This such-and-such movie? It was good, you should watch it, right? The same thing applies to books, or it applies to video games. Like, oh, did you play this game? It's good, you should play it. People have discussions about the art they enjoy, and that's a normal part of life. I don't see people aggressively proselytizing, like, you need to buy a PlayStation! Like, who cares? If you don't like video games, why would you, bother with them? That's fine. Who cares?
Them from literature. Even if, like, consuming this kind of literature might take the same amount of time as playing a AAA game through or something like that. Depending on how fast you read, it might be a couple games, right? I don't think it's just the time issue. I think the issue is more like video games are crafted nowadays to be maximally addicting. They are designed...
Okay, if he wants to talk about, like, Skinner box dynamics and things like microtransactions and loot boxes, that's something to be discussed, but that's an issue with... Oh boy, are we gonna get into this? That's an issue with the profit-driven motive of the video game industry as it stands today, right? That's an issue with the fact that shareholders are consistently pushing for more and more monetization being put into these things. so as to make the experiences last longer, so people feel like there's more bang for their buck, because they've done studies and they show the longer a game takes to complete, even if it's a relatively repetitive, threadbare product, people will consider it more worth their money because they spent more time on it. This is why you see like the Assassin's Creed games. I like the Assassin's Creed games a lot, but especially in the last 2 or 3 iterations or so, they've had a decent bit of grind in terms of the XP and money gathering. And then, of course, they sell you the solution for $10 or $20 or whatever and say, ooh, you get an XP boost and you'll get 2 times the XP for the rest of your game. And they're creating a problem to be solved by you giving them more money. It's messed up. I agree. Jim Sterling on YouTube has a great channel that talks about sort of the really, really underhanded monetization policies of the video game industry as it stands today. But this isn't something that's inherently baked into the idea of video games. It's actually a relatively recent change in the industry, right? There was a long period of time where you paid $60, you got your game, maybe there's some DLC, but even, whatever. It's a full product. Nowadays, you have a lot more, like, Skinner box type mechanics, where it's just trying to, oh, you did a thing, serotonin, ding, you did a thing, it makes a little noise, you leveled up, ding, 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 go collect these things, ding, 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 you found a Korok seed, ding, ding, ding. You know what I'm talking about if you play video games. Oh, you shot a thing in Fallout, and every time you kill something, a little cha-ching thing comes up when you get your XP. These sort of Skinner box where they're trying to, condition you to get satisfaction out of relatively banal activities within the games. Probably unhealthy, not great game design philosophy in terms of a piece of art, but it is a product that they're trying to profit from, and that's the intent. So I would agree that the business model that games are currently working under creates some pretty shady stuff, but that doesn't mean video games are inherently bad.
Like the quests and the characters and the mechanics of the game incentivize you. They conspire to incentivize you to play more and more. You have things like...
Yeah, horse armor. You guys remember when horse armor... I remember when horse armor came out. It was on Tech TV or G4, and everyone made fun of it, right? Everyone made fun of horse armor. But nowadays, that kind of thing is standard, right? You buy skins for games all the time for the same or more money. They were selling a bunch of different kinds of horse armor for Oblivion back in the day, and it was like $10. That's common. Look at Fortnite. Fortnite is a game that's basically based around getting people into the ecosystem so they'll pay money for skins. It's just common. Even Assassin's Creed. I like the Assassin's Creed games, but like the store is there and you can go and you can buy a bunch of outfits or armors or horse skins or whatever for your character, and they're so overpriced. They should just be in the game. It's frustrating. I agree. It's all very frustrating. Fee to pay bullshit. Again, yes, Jim Sterling has some good stuff about all this.
Steam, you have things like Xbox that give you achievements for doing minutia in the game. All of it is just putting you on a big hamster wheel where you have this illusion of accomplishment where, oh, I got to go home. You sort of feel like it's your job. You feel like you're doing something. Oh, I got to get this done, So people will spend more and more time playing these video games. Not just, mind you, it starts, oh, I have some time, I'll play some video games because I'm bored. But it eventually devolves into, oh, I'm at a social event, oh, I'm at school, oh, I'm at church, oh, I'm somewhere else, and I'm thinking about playing video games. Whereas I do not feel that ex-girlfriend I use as an example, I don't feel that I ever felt like she was, oh, I've got to get home and read my book.
Okay, here's the problem he's having here. He's comparing one individual he knew as an anecdote to a plethora of other people that he is saying hypothetically are a group of people who have addiction issues, right? Addiction issues to wanting to get back to that Skinner box that they have at home. I can understand that, and that's absolutely an issue, but it's not, again, indicative of most people who play video games. You're talking about people with impulse control issues, and probably a group of people with, if we're talking about being out in public and wanting to go home and play video games, probably people who are uncomfortable in social situations and instead would rather retreat to the comfort of something that they like, which could be video games, it could be a movie or a TV show or anything else. That's more a symptom of their issue, whether it be social anxiety or some sort of introverted nature that they don't want to be out with people, rather than it is an indictment of the video games as a whole. I don't know. I can recognize that I'm sure there are people out there who actually do feel that they have habits where they can't get themselves apart from video games and stuff, but it's certainly not the norm. I don't think that's the norm in any way, shape, or form. Ooh, that rhymed. Nice. No, and trying to indict the entirety of a medium, not just like a game, but all video games, when it's an industry larger than television and movies, and you're just saying because there are some people who have impulse control issues with it, which is a real problem, and I have empathy for those people, I have sympathy for them. Like, I can understand it, but that doesn't mean the industry as a whole... It doesn't mean that the medium as a whole is that.
Books. Like, it never came up. Like, if I knocked on her door, she might be reading one, but, it's not the kind of thing that takes over your life. Even if you're using an equivalent amount of time, if you happen to have more time and you read literature, I don't feel like it's addictive in the same way. Same thing, other kinds of art, painting, stuff like that. I mean, let's say, if you take a painting... If you take some kind of simple form of art, okay, look, there's a work of art. Oh, that's pretty, okay? You've now enjoyed this. There might be deep layers in here. There might be, like, subtext to this painting. But it does not take hours and hours to...
Okay, there are books that take hours and hours and hours. There are TV shows that take hours and hours and hours. You're specifically going to painting, which is something that, at least to a layman, can be enjoyed relatively quickly. I'm sure there are, like he said, people who, have degrees in art who can look at that and learn all sorts of different interesting things and analyze the techniques and all that stuff, and that's great. But for your layman, you'll look at the painting and be like, oh, that's nice. Or not, whatever you happen to think about the painting. Whereas a video game is something you engage with, even more so than something like a movie, right? Maybe not as much as a book, because books are sort of an interactive medium in the sense that you sort of create the stuff in your head that you're reading. But, I don't know. I feel like the fact that he's saying, well, video games take a long time to complete. It's like, okay, but you don't sit them and do them all at once, usually. You have them for a long time and you play them.
Consummately enjoy a painting or something like that, or even a movie. And I think video games... video games especially, the same thing, this has happened with television, okay? It used to be back in the day, a couple decades ago, that if you had a video game or television, it was a very small thing. You had Pong, okay? Pong is only going to be so addictive. I'm sure there are people who loved Pong and played it all the time and were addicted to it functionally. But it has nothing on the kind of games that come out nowadays that are like designed around your psychology to get you thinking about them, to get you laying in your bed at night thinking about the mechanics of that game. I remember...
That might be the case for, again, some people. There are always going to be any activity that you can take part in that can cause you pleasure in some way, whether we're talking about reading a really, really great book or watching an amazing film or playing a really, really engaging video game. All of these things, or, eating certain food or doing certain drugs, anything. And I'm not even talking about, like, physical addiction like you might get to, like, alcohol or cigarettes or something. I'm just talking about... the psychological condition of seeking out that dopamine hit time and time again. Habit forming. That can happen with anything. So of course it's going to happen sometimes with video games, and that's a problem. That's a problem that should be addressed. And people who can't, separate themselves from that activity, who can't take part in moderation, should either take steps to ensure that they're doing so in moderation, or if it's deemed really, really unhealthy for them, they should be able to step back and say, okay, this isn't something I should engage in. It's not healthy for me, right? But again, that has nothing to do with the vast majority of people who are able to engage with video games in a healthy manner. And again, I'll repeat, I agree that the like Skinner box design and the straight up gambling in the form of like loot boxes or casinos in the case of like Grand Theft Auto 5 Online, all these things are ridiculous, and they're a part of the business model of the video game industry that demands more and more monetization, and it's messed up and it needs to change. I agree. Regulation would be great, especially in regard to like loot boxes and stuff like online casinos. That would be excellent. However, indicting the entire medium just because there are shady elements of it means you basically need to indict every form of art on the planet, because every form of media is informed by the system that is used to sell you that media. There's shady elements of every single industry. It's kind of how capitalism works.
One time in college, there was some period where me and my roommate, we were playing, like, what is it? Like Fallout 3, which was actually sort of a sucky game. But we played it so much for like day in, day out for like a full weekend and then some.
You gotta play New Vegas. New Vegas is the better call.
That when we finally left the room, you like forget that you're not in the game. You're like, oh, I got to drink from this. Does it have radiation? You know, it takes over your brain in a way.
I have never had anything close to that happen to me, and I have played video games. I have had some long gaming sessions, and never once have I had that happen.
That, you know, only a video game can. And video games, as time has gone on, have become more like that. They suck more and more of you. They're time sinks. They're time vampires that are taking more and more of you. Same thing is true with television, actually. Because television, you know, it used to be the thing, oh, you know, here in my boomer family, we're going to turn on the tube and watch a show because we're too awkward to talk to each other during dinner, okay? And that was it.
Or you want to enjoy some media that you like together as a family. How about that?
Okay, that's as bad as it got.
Enjoying things with your family is bad.
Nowadays,
I want to live in a Norman Rockwell painting. It's not how that works.
It's here Netflix released this television show. It has 20 episodes. Each of them are movie length and, you know, have movie quality, and they're engrossing, and people watch them all they binge watch them all in a big row. It's something that sucks up your life a lot of the times. Now, I don't think television is quite as addicting as video games, frankly, because I don't really see, you know, many people out there who are like, oh, I got to get home and watch my show. I'm sure that happens, okay, if you're really engrossed in it. But video games, it just seems a little worse. Okay, that's just my opinion. Or at least, I shouldn't say my opinion. It's what I've observed in my life and in other people's lives.
You should definitely say your opinion. That's fine. He can have this opinion. Although, based on the other stuff he has posted about, it comes off as pretty cringe. He's a little bit like John Doyle, in that he's one of these people that's like, you can't masturbate, and if you ever smoke of the weed, you're gonna go to the hells. I don't know if he's religious. I'm just saying. Like, he has a whole video where he's like resisting temptation, and the examples of temptation are something that says coom tube, a pot leaf, a Nintendo Switch, and a Steam logo. Yeah.
Lives. So I definitely feel like media has definitely, you know, it has more claws in people nowadays because it's basically psychologically designed to take more and more of you, with each passing year. They get better and better at what they're supposed to do. So what ends up happening is people, you know, they are no longer invested in their actual life. They're just more invested in this video game or something else. And, you know, for me, even if you're, you know, I could even look at a video game and say, oh, wow, this is very well done. Wow, the plot is brilliant. The graphics are great. Wow, it is a work of art, in fact. Even the psychological manipulation of it is appreciable. Wow, they did so good in that. But you know, it's just not the kind of thing, you know, I just don't feel right about it. Like, I think it is something that you have to be a little... You have to treat it as sacred. You have to sort of be careful around it, because it's one of those things that's going to manipulate you. So, yeah, that's my opinion on video games. And, you know, in a social event, if I'm at a party and people are playing like Super Smash Brothers or something like that, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm against video games. I'm not going to play them. But it's just one of those things. It's just a severe opportunity cost. I wish I could have all those, years back, frankly, of playing video games. I wish I could have all that time back. But I never will. And, again, one of the best assets to have in your life, just be bored for a little bit. Because when you're bored, you start playing with things, you start fixing things, you start accomplishing things. Boredom inspires you to do things better than, just latching on to whatever media consumption you do. So that's my opinion on video games, okay? Hopefully I clarified some of that.
Well, that's it. This guy's disinvited from my Mario Party. We'll take a look at more of this guy's stuff in the future. I thought we'd start with the video game thing, but he does get into, like, chuddier stuff. But I thought that would be an interesting intro to that guy. I don't know. Moving on.